And the title of this talk is Empowering Women in Tech and Beyond, Bridging Gender Gaps for Sustainable Development. Our moderator is Sandra Rowe, and I'll leave you with the other mic.
Yeah, okay. All right, we get two. That's better than one. All right, well, welcome everyone. And why are we talking about gender equality? Well, there is a very specific initiative that we want to talk about first. But ultimately, I don't know if about half this room is women, probably a third, but let's face it, in tech in general, we have a bit of a disproportionate scenario sometimes when we see that women are not at the table or in the jobs or in the inputs of building the tech that we want. And let's face it, if you've got 50% of the population or more are women, they probably should be included. And not just women, by the way, it's diversity of all kinds. But today, I want to have two of our esteemed panelists here really talk about how we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts of this. So Emma, I want to start with you, representing the UN Population Fund. Can you explain what it is for those who may not be as familiar, but also your background and the initiative that we just announced, that we've just joined and you announced a year ago?
Thank you very much, and I'm really excited about that. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emma Hietaniemi. No worries to moderator. It's Finnish surname, so these are not the easiest. So no offense. So I'm from the United Nations Population Fund. We are also known by the acronym UNFPA. We are also known as the United Nations Sexual Health and Reproductive Health Agency. And we really put that in the center of, because if you imagine that if you don't have healthy population, if you don't have healthy women, if you don't have healthy mothers during the pregnancy and healthy babies, what do you have? So this is why we have to put women at the very center of everything. So at the heart of the communities, at the heart of the countries, and like I said, we are half of the population, but also to put it in the context of this summit. We work in over 100 countries, frontline with the healthcare workers, we work with the communities, we bring the commodities to that 10-year-old girl completely confused what is happening when they're getting their first period. But we are also working in these countries that are the most vulnerable to climate change. The most vulnerable to climate change have also proven, unfortunately, to be women. We are working in these countries where majority of world's young population lives, and we are working in these countries that are also the least connected to internet. So that really brings us to the very, very intersection of what we need to address. And every day we work with these women, with these people in a situation where we know that there is extreme climate stress, there are extreme health stress, there are these young people that need to realize their rights, their choices. They want and they need to be leveraging the technology. They need to be connected to the technology, but it just does not work for them because it has not been developed, it has not been designed for them. And when working in an innovation unit, this is really what we want to change. We need to start designing products, no matter where we sit, no matter what company are we representing, product or service we are producing, we need to think from the very beginning, does this really work for that 20-year-old new mother in Sierra Leone in extreme health stress, first time connecting to a new technical solution? We want that to work for them. We want these products to really work for everyone. So that is why we established Equity 2030 Alliance, because we believe that no product or service is the kind where we would not have to think about the gender implications. And unfortunately, that is often the case, especially with the healthcare. We see this in clinical trials, we see this in adverse reactions that these women are experiencing, but in technology as well. So AI, unfortunately, because this is trained on historical data, which is quite male biased, it just keeps on feeding itself. It keeps on just extrapolating itself. And we need to put an end to that. And that is something that we can do. And we can intentionally really flip the switch. We can start redesigning the world through the products and services that many of us, I'm sure, in the room are also representing. So shall I already tease a bit of how many different types of companies do we have on the Equity 2030 Alliance? We are close to 70 or over 70 members already, but maybe giving over then to you to.
So we have something that we want to put out to you all in our talk as well, because we think it's important. We talked about collaboration and community. Well, here is your opportunity, everyone. Equity 2030, which Alliance, which Emma's just mentioned. I'm going to hand over the mic to Nilmini because she's going to talk about why she has advocated for Hedera to join Equity 2030 Alliance, and GBBC as well. And we just announced that yesterday. We are going together to help the Population Fund do this, and we can do this together if you all also think about applying and joining. So, Nilmini, can you explain why you decided to be a leader and supporter of this initiative?
Well, I'm Nilmini Rubin. I'm Chief Policy Officer at Hedera, and I was really happy that Hedera was keen to join Equity 2030 because we, as a digital ledger technology, see how important it is that women have access to our products, and it is something that we want to give to the world, but it is also a benefit to us because women are half the market. So it's important that we certainly serve them. Hedera is known for inclusion of women within our ranks. We have 2 C-suite officers, myself and our CFO. We have worked with organizations on projects that address financial inclusion, especially the benefit to women in products. We're going to be doing a project soon with a big think tank in Washington about that. And we are supporters of a caucus in the United States. The House of Representatives has a caucus on wealth creation and financial inclusion, and we've been working with those members on how digital ledger technology can help build wealth creation in the United States, which is really important for women. And interestingly enough, the caucus is led by 2 women, Representative Joyce Beatty from Ohio and Representative Young Kim from California. And we are large supporters of women in crypto, so a plug for them also, for women and people who support women to look at women in crypto. And then when we just think about our products and we think about sustainability, as you mentioned, that women are so vulnerable to climate change. I'm really proud of the work that Hedera does on sustainability that Wes Geisenberger will be talking about. But also just some of the things that we don't always think about with gender, like digital identity. Those types of products are built on Hedera. And I think that that's really interesting. So when you go, let's say you're going somewhere and you have to show your ID, and it has like your name, and all you need to do is prove that you're over 21. But this ID that you hand over has your name, your address, your phone number, your full date of birth. It doesn't need to have that information. The bartender doesn't need to know that much information, but now they suddenly have it. And with digital ID, you're able to control what information you share, so that bartender just knows that you're over 21, which is really, really important for the safety of women, here in New York, here for Anga. But then you think about the applications for that. Women controlling their identity in different transactions throughout their lives, being able to control the information that they share, and it's really, really powerful. So I could go on, but I do think that it's just incredibly exciting, and I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to share a story of the power of what anyone here who's a builder can do. And we actually fell into one inadvertently, and then we're going to go back to talking a bit more about Equity 2030 Alliance. But we ran a hackathon during UNGA Week a couple years ago, and we had a couple different verticals, and one of the nonprofits that won was to actually create a digital twin cooperative in Peru with the World Food Program. So this nonprofit won a little bit of money, took that, and started developing a digital twin cooperative, working with a real cooperative in Peru, and using blockchain. And in the middle of it, someone came to me and said, "Do you know we just did something really cool?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't do anything." But I said, "What happened?" Well, because of the hackathon, they're like, all these women in this cooperative were recognized as owners of their farms. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Well, in the old way of naming and identifying each land, mass, it's actually owned by the family, but it would have only one name. And guess whose name was almost always by default on that? It was the male. It was the father figure. Well, guess what? In that digital ID twin that we created, or I should say the collective we, they added a second line. They added the women's name. And that simple act of building a field, a data field, in the digital version actually opened up a whole conversation around the women actually own the land. A lot of them should own the land. They actually work the land. And frankly, when their husbands, or if their husbands pass away before them, they often have a lot of issues with saying, that's actually my land. So can you imagine, in that one small act of going digital, we somehow not only opened the debate, but we recognized someone's identity. And that we hadn't even baked into the design of this. It happened. And now, by the way, we're talking to another group in Kenya, cooperative, about creating a digital cooperative twin. And guess what we're doing? We're baking that in. Because that is something we've learned now that we need to do across the board. So that's just one example to you of the intentionality that sometimes, like, we didn't know that was a problem. But guess what? Now that we do, we're designing it in. So Emma, over to you. Can you talk a little bit about the people that, or the organizations who are in the Equity 2030 Alliance and how diverse it is, and a bit more about how others could possibly get involved?
Sure, thank you. And I really like how both of your examples are perfect from this. If we can imagine the inconveniences, or from inconvenience to deadly, what the gender equity issues really are. So we have these where it might be just inconvenient. The phone might not fit to your hand. So we need companies who can, again, intentionally, I really appreciate that word, intentionally design a product that, okay, we have ensured that this wearable that we've developed has been measured to fit for different types of hands. Or then a question of really the financial inclusion. It's not only inconvenient, it's life-changing. Or the question of safety, again, not just an inconvenience, it can really literally save your life or keep you more safe, whether it's a digital space or whether it's a physical space. But then on the other end of the scale are also where it can really be deadly. So in our alliance, we have representatives from technology companies, from academia to pharmaceuticals, and at the very other end of that scale are also examples that where we have AI developers, we have new diagnostics developers, and they realize that the data that these diagnostics have been fed into, we need to make sure that we are not misdiagnosing women, that we are not passing them, we are not discharging them from the hospitals because we've just misdiagnosed them based on biased data. So this is really, I think, the beauty that we've managed to see on the first year of the Alliance as we launched 1 year ago. It really is a question for everyone. And what I also really appreciate on the conversations that we've had, and these have been very frank conversations between business leaders who really then go back to their teams and say, like, first they think that, I'm not so sure if we have anything, let me go back to our designer team or our engineers. And a week later, they can come back and say that, yes, by the way, we just have not been asking that question from ourselves, but our engineers, our designers, they can tell me exactly that how is it that we are including women in our design process. But also the fact that each and every one also recognizes that we cannot be here in this alliance alone. This cannot be just for the private sector. We need academia, who it has been decades already publishing studies, who really teaches how to take gender and sex into consideration. We need the member states. We have 3 member states, Ghana, Norway, Germany, who've already joined us, who know that, yes, we need policies to then also drive this. We need to stay accountable, and we need these accountability mechanisms. We also have investors, which is really a huge key that we need to turn things. We need investments. We need public, we need private, we need foundations, and not only these to be investing into more women, into more women-centric solutions, but to really mainstream that is actually our criteria, that should be the default question that you ask when you decide to whom you are funding, whose product you are funding, that we are asking these questions. And I think that brings back to what Sandra, you mentioned about intentionality. And that is something that I really like very many of the Alliance members also repeating. We promise we are intentional about our design.
Thank you for that. And I also want to give a shout out to the other Web3 groups that have joined recently as well. TaxBit, some of you may be familiar, crypto tax reporting and compliance. And Algorand Foundation, another layer 1, has also joined. And we highly recommend, if any of you are interested, to look at their application process and apply for yourself to become a part of this movement. And I'm going to call it a movement because at the end of the day, it's about the long game, not some, announcement and then we all go away and forget about it. It needs to be, as I said, designed in, thoughtfully thought about, question what your organization is doing. And look, there are probably things that we're going to look at as GBBC and help our members to look at with much more, I'm going to use the word again, intentionality of, are we actually being as inclusive as we could be? Because we're all really busy. We're all just trying to get stuff out the door and do things, but sometimes in that, there is carelessness and bias that we don't even realize. Nilmini, I'm going to go back to you because you are a layer 1, and the question is like, okay, we get it. You guys support women. That's cool. You're going to you do a lot of different initiatives, support it. What would you say the industry, like Web3 in general, could really do more beyond just saying, yes, we support women? What do you think are practical things that we should be doing?
I think that the most useful thing that a company could do is to just ask questions. So when you're making a decision, just ask a question like, what would be the gender factor in this? Whether it's like a product design or a policy or anything, just like ask the question and see because you don't need to necessarily rely on anyone specific in the room to just start thinking critically. And if one of the answers to your questions is, well, we need to bring more expertise in, bring it in and don't be shy. Because we're so early in this industry that we're setting the design, we're setting the platform for things, and we want to make sure that at this point we get it right, because it's really hard to retrofit.
Emma, any other thoughts that you want to conclude? We have only a few more minutes left. So in parting words for the Population Fund, would you like to share?
Maybe I could just recap that or summarize that. If you thought that, sexual health, the health of women, does that apply to me? Just think again. Just think through the entire process. Think through from the very beginning of the data that you collect to bringing it to the teams, to innovating together in-house. What do we want to achieve? Who do we want to serve? Do we want to serve a niche market, or do we want to serve 100% of the population? Who do we really want to serve? What are these points, these pain points that we have, and how can we really fix it together? And secondly, also really being intentional about how do we make sure that it's not just, women in our teams, they must know, let's leave it to them. It really is everyone's business. It's not just putting this on women's shoulders, but it should be everyone's business. And that also goes back to the point of education. So really, let's think about how can we make sure that if we don't have the expertise in-house yet, how can we really support our staff within our company to get educated about this? And good thing is that many are starting only now. So if you're starting now, you're not late. you will still be on the right train. But as long as you start tomorrow.
Fantastic. Well, look, there is a reason why we started off this summit with this topic. It was intentional. We want you to think about that for the next couple hours because we are going to get deep into carbon markets and tokenization and all the stuff that many of you are here for. But let's face it, if you don't include as many people as possible of all kinds of backgrounds and walks of life and gender and blah, 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 then what are we doing? Are we just doing a version of what already exists? Let's do better. Let's just set better standards. So the UN's, we're here during UNGA week, right? New York Climate Week. Let's set higher standards for all of ourselves. Let's not just meet the minimum. It's not good enough. And as Masamba also said, we're not here to just decarbonize corporations. We've got to do well beyond that. And I know a lot of you are really forward thinkers, so you're already doing that. Let's just amplify that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Nilmini and Emma.